Hi everybody, my name's Rebecca and welcome back to my bookish travels. Today I am doing my wrap up for the month of March and I definitely surprised myself. I read 20 books and I think the only reason I accomplished that is because I had a mixture of what I was reading as well as 10 of them being manga. So I'm really excited. I have some hits and some misses that occurred in the month. And if you guys are excited to see what I read, feel free to stick around. So the first thing that I finished in the month was actually listening to the second GT and the Halo Express audiobook, and this was called God's Plan of Salvation. I gave this 3 stars, and it was very nostalgic making, but for some reason I cannot remember listening to this one when I was a kid, even though I swear my parents had all of the cassettes for this series. The next one that I read was The Invisible Life of Addie Larue by V.E. Schwab, and this was the February pick for the book club I'm a part of, and this one I gave 4 out of 5 stars. I actually had a really hard time getting into the story, and I did an actual full review of it, so I will link that in the comment section down below if you guys want to hear more of my thoughts. I think this was very well written, but it definitely is one that I don't know if I'll necessarily read it again, but I did very much enjoy the second half of this novel for the pacing of it. And again, not going into details. If you want to hear them, you can go and watch that video, but I think that this was a very interesting read. The next one that I read was 7 Up. This is the 7th novel in the Stephanie Plum series, and I gave it 5 out of 5 stars. I had so much fun reading this, and I just didn't want to put it down. I definitely was feeling kind of like I was in a reading slump after finishing Addie LaRue, so this was the perfect pick-me-up, and it did not disappoint. I laughed out loud numerous times in this story, and it definitely drove me to want to read further in the series, and hopefully this month I can pick up the next book in the series. The next one that I read was Oddball by Sarah Anderson. This is the 4th one in the Sarah Scribbles collection, and I gave this 3 out of 5 stars. It didn't hit the same way that the other ones in the series did. I still feel like nothing will ever hit the same way that Adulthood is a Myth will, but I definitely had a lot of fun. I'm so glad that this was a yellow cover. I absolutely love this one, and I definitely feel like her representation of introverts and readers and just not always wanting to be social or feeling social, like it just is so relevant, and I definitely connect with her scribbles so much because I feel like every page is as if she was looking at me being like, haha, let me just reveal your inner self, because that is what it feels like. So I love these, and if she continues to produce more, I will definitely continue to read it. Next, I read Winter Dark, and I finished this with my mom. We listened to it as an Audible original, and I gave this 2 out of 5 stars. I just did not connect with the story very well. The narrator did a phenomenal job. I'm not kidding. If you guys could listen to a narration where you're like, this is the same person narrating the entire book, that is the kind of feeling you have. She did a phenomenal job narrating and presenting the story and the different characters, and just being so true to the actual portrayal of the accents for certain characters and whatnot. I just didn't connect with the story. The writing, the way it's done is very interesting, but it's like nothing happens and then something happens. And then we go back to nothing happening, and then something happens, and then it's done. So I feel like I don't want to put myself through that again, so I'm probably not going to continue with the series. but as an editor's extra, I'm glad I listened to it. I definitely will say that Mom and I had to push through for the first few hours of the audiobook, but after that, all of a sudden, it kind of picked up a bit and we were very involved in the story. But before that, we definitely were feeling it more as a 1-star. And then with the actual resolution and the second half of the story, I feel like it definitely would get 2 stars for me, but I don't think that I could respectfully give more than that for how I enjoyed the story. Next, I read Dark Intentions on my Kindle, and I read this one relatively quickly. So I gave this 3 out of 5 stars. I really liked it. It definitely kept me wanting to continue reading, and at times I was shocked. I'd be reading and I'd look down and be done about 100 pages in the story, and I'd be like, this did not feel like I read that much. And I love when that happens with books. So I gave this 3 out of 5 stars. I did read the bonus scene that the author provides at the end of the book, and I read that as well, and I found that bonus scene very, very fun to read because it's just completely different. Like, you could tell where it would fall in the story, but it felt completely different than the way that the story was kind of unfolding. So do I like that she still included it as this bonus scene? Yes, I think it worked very well as a bonus scene. It kind of felt like it was deleted from the book, and she was like, but I had so much fun writing it that I still want to share it. And it gave that kind of a feel. So I really enjoyed getting to see the author revealing things that you don't normally get to see sometimes. You don't get to see bonus scenes, or perhaps it was a deleted scene and sharing it with the audience. And it almost made me like the book even more because it felt so real. Like, it didn't feel like the author had to produce it and put it out there. It was like, I wrote it, it didn't make the cut, but I had fun writing it, so let me share it with you. And I enjoyed that. It didn't have to be a novella. It didn't have to be any extra bits. You're not losing anything if you don't read it, but I like when there's those little things that authors will do that just kind of, it adds a certain level of value to their work and to them as an author and a creator for this story. I read There's Someone Inside Your House by Stephanie Perkins, and I was so disappointed with this. I gave it 1 out of 5 stars. I buddy read this with my friend Paige, and she had the same feelings. So things that I liked about this were definitely Ollie's older brother and McCanny's grandmother in the second half of the story. And the things that I didn't like actually pertained more to the writing itself. This definitely had more of a surface level story, and it felt very much a first rough draft and definitely needed some, second or third drafts done for the story. I thought this was going to be more of a thriller than a slasher novel, and I didn't really get anything out of this that I wanted to. I think that the way that the characters were killed was very ingenious, very unique, very horrifying, very nerve-wracking, definitely shocking and whatnot, but there just wasn't any depth. And I feel like there was this big buildup about McCanny's past, and then it ended up being one thing where it just seemed like in reality that would not have happened. It seemed very much like you had to suspend your disbelief. And I also found that there was a very triggering scene in this, dealing with bullying and hazing, and I'm just not okay with that. So this was a flop for me. I definitely did not like it. I didn't enjoy reading it, and I'm actually not planning on keeping this book because next I read Cheshire Crossing by Andy Weir and Sarah Anderson. Yes, Sarah Anderson from Sarah's Scribbles did the artwork in this. Andy Weir kind of created this story before he became like a famous author for The Martian, and it's basically what happens to Dorothy, Alice, and Wendy after they've gone to this alternate world, alternate universe, and they've come back and now they have to deal with reality. And I just found it very interesting, and I definitely would appreciate having more if they wanted to continue on with this graphic novel series. If they didn't, it's okay as a standalone. And I really enjoyed it. Like, it was just a fun read. It wasn't something that had to be in depth or, very much delved into different parts of it. It was short, it was fun, it was entertaining, and exactly what I was looking for when I went into it. Well, then I read Happy Marriage Volume 1 by Mackie and Joji. I love Mackie and Joji. I find her writing is just so fun, and it definitely hits the shoujo feels in my heart. I love shoujo manga. It was my first read and my first love when it came to manga when I started reading it, and I just really enjoyed this. I gave it 3 out of 5 stars. Manga is one that I feel like I don't rate as clearly as I should. So I usually give manga 5 stars because out of entertainment, I normally really enjoy it. So I'm trying to be a little bit better on my rating this year for things. So I read this first one and it definitely just met everything I was looking for in the read. To that, I read The Case of the Peculiar Pink Fan by Nancy Springer and narrated by Katherine Kellegrin. And I listened to this with my mom. We had so much fun listening to it. I think we listened to it in the span of 2 sittings, and we just had a lot of laughs with it. And we really enjoyed getting to see Sherlock appear a bit more in the story and just kind of see the story progressing further than I think we were expecting it to. It was just a lot of fun listening to it. We really enjoyed it. And who doesn't love Enola Holmes and the adventures she gets involved in? And I love getting to see her becoming a little bit stronger of a character and more confident in herself. And that takes place a lot in this one. All right, then we move on to the next ones that I read, which were Happy Marriage Volume 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and then 10. So I read in the span of a full weekend all 10 of the Happy Marriage series, and each one I gave 3 out of 5 stars. I had so much fun reading these. The author did such a good job of keeping the story streamlined. She didn't delve off into secondary storylines that were irrelevant to the book, and I just really enjoyed it. I think she did a really clear story from volume 1 through 10, and I just really enjoyed it. There were a couple of bonus short stories that she had included that I didn't really think added much value, but she included because they were part of like specialties in the actual like manga releases when they went in the actual comic that gets released. Because I believe the way that manga gets released is it's in like a booklet, like how we'd buy our Archie comics, but it would be like different chapters of different mangas that are running, and it's kind of like the bonus stories that happened in there. So some of them I was kind of like, I didn't really care much for it, but I thought it was fun that she still included that so that you could still feel part of it even years after it had finished releasing. So I really enjoyed this. Again, I love Mackie and Joji, and I love just how how honest she is with her creation. Like, they're not perfect, they're definitely flawed, and you can have a lot of fun while reading her manga. Last but definitely not least, I have I Believe in a Thing Called Love by Maureen Gu, and I ended up giving this one 2 out of 5 stars. I ended up reading bulk of it last year, and then I had to put the book down because I just got to a point where I was like, I can't continue reading this. And I jumped back into it and was like, I'm gonna finish this, and I did. I'm glad that I finished it, but I definitely don't know if this is going to be one that I'm going to keep on my shelf. And I gave it 2 out of 5 stars because I love getting to see representation of characters that love Korean dramas. So I have watched Asian dramas since I was 13, 14 years old. In between when I was 13, I think I started watching it probably a month or two before I hit 14. And I've watched Taiwanese dramas, and I've watched Korean dramas and Japanese dramas. I've watched dramas that take place in Singapore and in the Philippines and mainland China. And I definitely, you know, because I've watched it for over 10 years, it holds a very, very dear place in my heart. But I feel like in this book, for a character that's supposed to be going to school to become a doctor, I just really had to suspend disbelief for a lot of things. And I'm actually debating doing a full book review on this because I feel like there's some key things that I really want to discuss. So I don't know. I'm thinking I might do a book review, and that way I can kind of put it out there and discuss and hopefully hear back from other people. You know, did they like it? Did they not? For me, it just did not hit where I was hoping it would. I wanted to fangirl over this so much more than I am right now. I'm really disappointed. I went in with such high hopes for the book, and I just feel like I was left disappointed and wanting, and that's never how you want to feel when it comes to a book. So that is it. That is all 20 of the books that I read or listened to in the month of March. Did you guys read anything that I have discussed? Did I maybe introduce some new ones that you may want to read? Do you guys read it and have different feelings to me? Definitely share. I love discussing, good or bad. Let's discuss, because I love books and I love talking about them, and that's why I'm sharing my thoughts with you guys. And I hope that you've enjoyed this video. I will talk to you again next time. Until then, stay safe, stay well, and I'll see you next time. Bye!